Hi, Ishan. Thank you for joining us for the 11th Indie Meme Film Festival. And firstly, congratulations once again on Schirkoa in Lies We Trust. I am very much interested to just start right off the bat with asking you what your present feelings are about this world and this story, because in some or the other form, it stayed with you for more than a decade now. First as a short film, which won awards at the American it won the American Short Film Award. It was celebrated at Venice as well. So I wanted to understand from you, what is it that you take away with your process being in this world and crafting it first as a 13, 14-minute short film, then as a full feature length film, which of course premiered at the International Film Festival of Rotterdam, winning the NetPack Award, and had its own journey throughout the world. And it is still relevant and talked about even now.
Um, um, when it started back in 2011, when I was still, thinking about the world, it was just a graphic novel at that stage. Because I thought I would just try to. I had so many reactions to the world that time, and the world was. I felt that time that the world was going insane, but I had no idea what was coming, honestly. So I just thought, okay, this is pretty interesting. What is going on? I would write it in a graphic novel. I will draw a few designs, and that would be my reaction, a simple reaction. And then a bit of an unease started, like, in two ways. One, the graphic novel was becoming too long. And second, I felt that the world was also going a little bit too uneasy at the same time. And I thought I should do something immediately right now, rather than waiting for 5, 6 years for the graphic novel to finish. And since being an animator, I thought I had this urge to finish that short film, which was like an excerpt from the graphic novel. That time I was still working as an art director in Singapore, and to take that, creating a 15-minute short film by yourself, dedicating all your time to it, I felt it was better that I return to my home country and then just focus for next 4 years on this short film. It was tough in many ways, but at the same time, it was very fulfilling and rewarding because I was doing what I initially wanted to do when I wanted to become a filmmaker, make films rather than working, in a company. So I came back and I started working on this short film. And at the same time, so many things happened in the world. Slowly, you could see the break between the two left and right wing poles of the world. And it was almost all over it, starting in the same zone. And at the same time, my short film was only talking about one side, which was the dystopia side of it. And I felt that, okay, maybe I think I can sense that probably the world is going to be polarized a little bit more than what I'm showing right now. It's not just Orwellian world. It's a lot more than that. It has two flip sides. So while doing the short film, I started writing the film script at the same time, which was the probably the whole graphic novel in a way. And the graphic novel showed both the sides. The perceived utopia, like if we keep going this way, if we keep going liberal all the way, if there are no rules, is this game even entertaining anymore? Is it like a zoo or is it like a jungle? And if there are too many rules, then we can already see where it is going. So I've explored both the extremes and I wrote the script and I thought, okay, if something comes out of the short film, it would be a natural idea to explore the feature film. And the short film, as you mentioned, it did very well in the festivals. It brought me to a very good stage. I traveled the world with it, and everyone was asking, "What am I doing next?" And I said, "Oh, I have the script. This is where I feel the world is going, and this and that." And that became a very long process. Of course, like a feature film like this takes a lot of effort, and you have to convince people that you're making this very niche, animated, adult-oriented feature film that nobody wants to probably, think about distributing or finding. And it took a while, but I found very good like-minded artists who supported the project, from France to Germany to India. And that became a very long journey. And during that journey, everything you can imagine in the world started happening. And I was like, I was right. I had that feeling like, okay, this is it. This is prophetic. And beyond, honestly, even beyond my imaginations. But good part is that animation is a surrealist medium. So I could blend in the realism with fantasy a lot more. So you have that timelessness to it. And as you can see, I'm not talking about any particular culture, country. It's a poetry on humanity itself. So yeah, it's been a pretty crazy and wild journey, and I feel we're still spiraling down right now. Yeah.
Uh, Fantastic. So do you feel somewhere reality deserves a bit of a credit as well for helping your story find a leg in itself? Because that is one of the other things which stayed with me, other than it being so prescient. Even the short film, which went around the world in 2016, and even the feature film itself, it is filled with many astute observations which can be related across cultures, with different people's realities. So I wanted to understand at the genesis of it, what was your writing process like? Were there any literary or cinematic references you took, or was this just because I know you mentioned that in an interview that uh, when you were still working in animation, you first got this idea by just observing people in your commute and just seeing and just imagining, this homogeneity of what masses of people bring about in them. And that's where the idea, I assume, of the bagheads comes in, this iron fist rule of conformity. So I just want to understand, how did you go about finding such unique traits which are specific to their world, but at the same time they have a certain universal appeal and relatability across different cultures?
See, the genesis of the project was not exactly my reaction to that, oh, I want to change the world. It was never that. It was a very personal reaction to me reacting to, oh, is this how adult life looks like? Because I was in a dream. I was like, okay, I will become an animator. I will draw every day. I will be talking to like-minded people, reading books, comics, and this and that. But when I started my job, it was like any other job. It was like, okay, wake up at 7, commute for 2 hours, reach a cubicle, you spend your rest of the day and probably your life in a cubicle, and then come back. And I was devastated. I was like, oh, nobody told me this when I was schooling and all that. And I saw people were happily doing that. Everyone I knew, not just animators, but everyone I knew was like, okay, this is what adult life looks like. You should just get ready for it. I wasn't ready for it. I couldn't take it. I can still not take it. I'm still weird in that way. So what happened was I was like, okay, I have to do something about this. This is a mental dystopia. So only thing I could do was when I was commuting, I had only that time in my life. Coming back, you're too tired. Waking up here, just getting ready. So in the commute, I had like roughly 45, 50 minutes. I used to draw. I used to write about all my frustrations and angst about this life that I had. And I realized that I'm getting lost in this sea of people going to the office. And the only way I could represent that was replacing my face with a very generic box. So I would draw people, I would draw myself, and I would be like, okay, this is a single person. Can you find an individual who is me in this drawing? And I could not. That was the genesis of the idea, which was a very personal take on this whole thing. That is probably, you feel that it can be relatable, because then I took that further and I realized, okay, this is something which is happening in a lot of Asian countries primarily. And then it is spiraling up into the larger politics of the world. So it became a little bigger. And at the same time, Arab Spring was happening all over the Middle East, 2011. And, a lot of things were happening in India as well around 2014. And then later on, of course, from 2016, world changed upside down. So all those things definitely started to come into the picture. Um, and again, I mean, I would say for the feature film, what worked really well is also the collaboration that it was. My French producer brought these amazing voice actors like Gulshifteh Farahani from Iran, Gaspar Noé from France, King Khan, who's an amazing techno musician from Germany and all. And when we were discussing the script together, Asia Argento, we were all discussing the script together, and it became a very interesting collaboration. They all started to bring their own parts of their lives and what they feel about this script. And same thing happened because I've been a long, I mean, I've been a very big fan of Piyush Mishra and his works, and we have met a few times in many places. And I had this book of his. One of the poetries kind of summarized what was happening, in the world. And I pitched it to him that this is a script. I want you to be a beakhead, a bird kind of poet in the movie who recites what is happening to the world. And he loved the idea straight away. And if you go to that part of the movie, that is the summary of the film. ये कौन देश का शायर है जो संग में बारूद ढोता है, ये कौन देश की फिरकी है जहाँ गजल गजल धमाका होता है. All those things really start to bring the film together. And this is not something which was written in the script. This is something that these artists and collaborators brought in. Even the songs that you see from Asia Argento and King Khan, it's their own songs they've brought into the project and stuff like that. Anurag brought in such player in one of the humorous scenes. Karan became this host. I never thought it would have a dystopia would have such a flamboyant and very charming host. But then Karan brought that flair, and it became very ironical and really funny at the same time. So it's also the reaction, but also the collaborators who made it who it is, apart from my own script.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question because funnily enough, in the first few minutes of your film, the first like the film immediately reminded me of a frame from Enter the Void by Gaspar Noé. And then few minutes in, I see his name, I see Lav Diaz, I see Karan Johar, and I just felt like you should know this is probably one of the biggest casting coup anyone has done in a long time to have such a diverse set of people in. So, tell me something about, why was it important for you to keep this as a composite world? Because again, this is, yes, English is the primary language, but there are flavors and influences from across. One can hear Japanese in the subway train. There are Persian influences. There's a mix of language which I would say is somewhere between India and Hindi. At the same time, it's obviously has a very Western bent to it. So why was it important for you that this story be crafted in such a way that, because it is very unlike for a lot of films to do that, because generally, as is a lot of stories try very hard to be rooted in one thing, whereas yours is rooted in this modern technocracy of sorts, which, in a way does unite the world. So why was that so important for you?
I mean, as soon as you frame it or box it to a single country, language, or a culture, you immediately start to think, oh, it's about that country. That's something I definitely didn't want to do. I wanted to make sure that it's a human story in any way. But at the same time, I didn't want to make it complicated in any way. So, I mean, whatever it is, it still feels complicated to a lot of people. But uh, as far as the world goes, I want to just comprise the world into a single city, basically, because it's easier to tell the story of a city rather than countries or continents, so that you're restricted to it. So in the end, it became the graphic novel was a story of three different cities. One is the dystopian, other is a utopian, and the third is a spiritual. The spiritual part you see a very little in this movie, but still it's part of it. So I thought that okay, just to signify the scale of this, I will just comprise it into three stories only, and I will concentrate three countries only, and I will concentrate on those. And then, as far as the language and culture goes, I'm going to juxtapose everything together, English being the primary language, which is what I feel in India also. India has so many languages, and English becomes the primary language. And then you still start hearing other things. You start, expressing yourself in the languages, but then there is one binding thread to it. That I feel is largely happening with the world in a way. And at the same time, you can sense that you have people from different ethnicities and cultures bringing into it. For example, my storyboard artist in the movie is Shahab. He's from Iran. Okay. I just reached out to him because I just love his artwork so much. And he immediately was hooked with the story. He found it very relatable. And again, he brought his own ideas to it, which made it again something else. The character designer in the movie, he's Yanning. He's from China, and he again when he saw the script, he was like, okay, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that, and something which I would never think of, but he thought, that was a good idea. So blending those things through these artists who have a very different take on designs, drawings, worlds, structure of the story itself was really important at the same time. So since it was a collaborative process between different artists from all over the world, and the film is also talking about people from all over the world coming together into a single city, I think it naturally came together like that. But the primary reason is I didn't want it to box it to a singular culture.
Tell me something about the animation style because it was very much unique even in 2016 when you first made the short film. And because at that time, again, we're talking about a time where a film still like, Into the Spider-Verse is not broken into the mainstream. So even then, and then continuing with that in 2024, what is it about this particular animation style, which is still not that popular, not that well known in, feature animated circles? What was it about this style that appealed to you as opposed to, some other route that you could have taken? And why do you think that? Because it does leave an impression, it leaves a strong impression on the viewer in terms of because you're dealing with something which does feel there is a certain aspect of surrealness to it, but at the same time, it creates haunting images, which I don't think any other animation style would have accomplished. But I just wanted to understand your perspective as the creator to choose this design.
It's more like a personal taste thing. I like something which is a little bit more painterly, or at least has some outlines over it. I work in this medium called 3D animation, which makes things a lot more photorealistic. And that I think is something which I don't like that much. I mean, I play video games. We all play video games, and video games try to strive for realism. What was realistic in 2010 is laughable in 2026, and that you kind of lose that thing that it doesn't become timeless that way. But if you look at any anime which was made in 1980, it still looks pristine in 2026 just because they have stuck to a style which is painterly, which feels like a book coming out of life or a manga coming out of life. That was something really important. Around the same time in the 2010, 2015, there were a couple of video games that came out which did it really well. One of them, which really hooked me, was called Dishonored. And there is this video game series called Bioshock. These two games had a very cool aesthetic to them, which, I mean, if you still pick those games and play them, you will still feel like, okay, the artist has a different voice behind this, who's creating these looks because they look painterly, they stand the test of time. And personally, I like them more than any photorealistic game or a movie. So I started dabbling with that. Like initially, when you start in 3D animation, it automatically gives you a photoreal look. So you have to break that. You have to break that algorithm, and you have to try to do your own things over it, which is a different workflow altogether, which I was dabbling with my short film back in 2012, 2014. And then, of course, by the time I started working on the feature film, the Spider-Verse had already come out. So what was a very niche indie thing became mainstream right away. So it became slightly easier to tell people, what we are creating looks like Spider-Verse. Back then in 2016, you wouldn't be able to tell them, like, what does it look like? And then a second aspect to that was, of course, the budget of the movie. You can't, I mean, this movie is a very, very low budget film. It's done by a very small crew. So I had to be very, very careful with the technology I was using in it. I mean, I can talk at I can really talk about it a whole day. That part of the film. Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask about the music and the sound of the film. You obviously had Sneha Khanwalkar on board for this. So I wanted to understand, how did she come on board the project, and how did you both start defining the sounds of this film? Because it plays a powerful role, especially when you enter Kontaka, and amongst the when the event is going on and 197A has this big monologue on stage. I think the dramatic sound effects used throughout that sequence and in that portion really makes a big impact on the viewer as well. So how did you guys define the sound for this?
Oh, yeah, sound is probably for me the most important thing in making this. So when I do the storyboarding, even before that, what I do is I create a black version of the film in which there are no visuals at all. It would still be like 110-minute cut, but you would hear everything. That's how that's my process is. So I do temp sound all the way for the movie first. So I start hearing the markets, the big grand halls and everything, and then I put the temporary voices over them just to feel the movie. And this is something which I would share with my sound designer first. I would send him just a rough soundscape and just a rough temp, music tracks which I use. That okay, this is where we need to create the sonic for this thing, and then my sound designer is Nicholas Tito. He was the same guy who worked on the short film. So we have a very good synergy on what we both want to accomplish. And sound and music are super intertwined in the film. It cannot be like sound stops here and music stops there. It's almost always diegetic. It's always part of the environment in a way. And same thing I briefed to Sneha. I reached out to her again, that, I love your work and this is the kind of film I'm making. And she was immediately hooked. She's an amazing collaborator. She gave me so much time on this movie that she mentioned that other producers are getting jealous of Schirkoa now about how much time I'm giving to this project. And I was like, thank you. This is great. She's amazing. I would love to work with her again on anything. We did work on a Star Wars movie after that. Um, so yeah, that became a long process. So initially, for first 6 months or so, we were just meeting for a month, once or twice a month, just finding the voice of the music, and we were dabbling with two things. Primarily, it was very orchestral and jazz in the dystopia, very classical, and it was very folk in Kontaka. Those were the two pillars that we decided, okay, this is where we will, stick to. And of course, we started to bring a bit more techno and noise in Kontaka later on because it became more, natural to do that. And of course, we started bringing a few vocals in Schirkoa, the dystopian portions that Sneha did herself. The genesis was this track that her husband had written, Kanu Behel, a song called Gol Gol. That was the gist of the movie. Like whatever we do, we just keep running goal in the circle of life. That was really nice. She sang the song, and that theme became the theme of the movie right away. But when it comes to Kontaka, things became far more interesting because we had Lavdias reciting a poetry on stage, which should not have been a song, which should stay as poetry, as somebody reciting a real poetry. So when he was doing the voices, me and Bikwan, my co-producer from France, we suggested that you can do two versions. You can do one in which you're just, reciting it. But then as he was reciting, he said, can I sing it? I said, of course, please go ahead. And then when he sang it, it became something else entirely, which you see in the movie. Same thing happened with Piyush Mishra. He when he speaks, he has a very distinct tonality to it. And I didn't want to diverge from it at all. The way he says it already worked for the character, the beakhead guy. It was already weird. So it sounded great. When King Khan started talking about the project, and his music is so intense, it's one of the best music you will ever hear. I immediately wanted to license some of his tracks for the movie. So we licensed two or three tracks from him that became his performance in the movie. So already, if you can see, Kontaka had a Tagalog poem, a Hindi poem, and three distinct, very underground rock songs from King Khan. And then the main thing in Kuntaka was the DJ set that mermaid character Lies was performing on stage. And that again needed a little bit of more personal touch. So there's this Asia Argento does DJing a lot, actually, and she used to have a lot of these albums which she produced. uh, so one of her tracks was Saxodrome, which I loved. I was listening to it while creating Kuntaka, and when she came on board, I was like super excited. Okay, this is it. So we pitched it to her that why don't we use your track and your mannerisms, and then create a character around it that she's the one who's performing the DJ set. So that became the main track in Kuntaka. And one of the tracks which I kept going back to was a track from Baraka, done by brothers from Australia. So that track we licensed again. It is a documentary movie, Baraka. They used the track from it, and we used the track in one of the procession sequences. So Kontaka became very eclectic. We started to take music and poetry from the people who were contributing, the voice actors, and Schirkoa became very much structured. Sneha just created a whole soundscape, and we kept picking jazz and orchestral music from it.
It's amazing. I that the open spirit of collaboration, I think, really does come across in the film. I wanted to ask you, sticking with the world of Kantaka itself, one of the most important sequences, even in the film, is 197A's transformation and spurred on by his monologue. So, was that something that you always had in mind, or was that something you discovered while working on the film itself?
That was from the original script. Nothing changed in that sequence. That was always like that. The only thing that changed over the production in that was the voice actors. So one thing which probably not many people notice is that while 197 is making that speech, we have this great voice actor who did his voice all the way in the movie. His name is Shahab Sarwar. And what he does, Shahbaz Sarwar, sorry, what he did was he brought this amazing vulnerability to 197's character. But then during the speech, we sense a transformation happening in 197. He became a different person altogether. So midway his speech, we transit to a different voice actor. And his name is Tibu Fortis, and he brought a bit more commanding quality to the voice. Also, a little bit of the feminist side of 197. They started to really become bigger and bigger as he was making the speech. So while you see the physical transformation, you also sense it when you hear the voice. You can't pinpoint what's happening, but we did the flip of actors during that thing. But in terms of what happened in that sequence, it was always there. There would be an asteroid on Kontaka. There would be a larger than life, speech. There would be these mass suicides or whatever, which keep happening. And the idea was always that that night we see a birth of a cult in Kontaka right away. We see a change, a massive change, which looks like a change, but it will become the same thing after a few decades. But for that moment, people feel this is it. This is going to be the main rebellion, and it is going to change everything. And the world is going to be so awesome because she is our leader, and this and that. So that birth of a cult always starts with something massive like this, and then it slowly goes back to its own thing.
Because you had mentioned the graphic novel at the start, I was curious if you are still exploring more stories in the world of Shokoa, maybe in film or in some other format.
The technique I used to make this film was since I was low on budget and I had to be very, very economical, I used a video game engine to make the movie. And that's why some of the aesthetic does look like a video game because there are two techniques I used. One is Unreal Engine, which is a video game, which is used for creating video games. Second is motion capture, which means you bring real actors on stage, you let them wear bodysuits, and they act for real and their performances get transferred into the software. So through those two techniques, I could actually direct real actors rather than just animating them myself. And second is I could produce the movie in a much faster pace because it was needed given the budget and time constraints. But then that also means that this world actually exists in a video game space right now. And video games for me is another great art form apart from cinema. So I really want to explore and continue to explore the world of Schirkoa in some sort of a video game, which I'm sort of working on right now. I'm not getting enough time to do it right now, given the projects I'm working on, but that is something which I'm planning.
So, speaking of the projects you're working on, I think the whole world got very excited last year when we learned that the world of Bahubali is expanding.
Yeah.
So, I do want to ask you how that journey has been for you so far. How has it been stepping into this world, into a project of a very different nature? And, what are some of the things that it has either taught you or opened your eyes up to in terms of it could be anything from technique, art of storytelling, or things like that.
It's yeah, it's a surreal journey, honestly, from Shirkwa to Bahubali, definitely. And thank God I had this little project Star Wars episode, which I made in the that acted as a bridge, honestly, because Shirkwa is more on the adult side. Then coming to Star Wars, it's for the kids, and then Bahubali is for everyone. So I could see the whole spectrum changing right away. Shobu, the producer of Bahubali movies, he saw some of the stuff on Shirkwa in Lies We Trust, and he was very interested. Like, what am I doing in this space? So he and I met, and he mentioned that he wanted to explore the Bahubali things, the Bahubali stories, and the world. But that time it was not concrete. We just had a very nice discussion. He's one of the nicest person you can ever meet. A great producer and a great man. So I went back and I kept thinking, is it even possible for me to contribute? Because I have a very different take on things. So I did what I do. I just took an idea and I brought it to a surreal space, which you won't imagine can exist. So I took Amrendra Bahubali's story when he died in the first movie, and I took it to his afterlife. Like, okay, what happens to his soul when he dies? I'm a huge sucker for Amar Chitraktha. I had almost every Amar Chitraktha in the house, so I dabble with Indian mythology a lot. But I am very much interested also in the Vedic cosmology and the scientific side of it. Like, whatever is written in our Vedas, if we take it for real, how do we retrofit the science behind it? So I dabbled in those two things. I created a story and a pitch. I pitched it to him, and both Rajamouli sir and Shobu loved it. And from there, the journey started right away. But then during this process, we got so many collaborators and some amazing meetings with Rajamouli sir that opened my eyes to this world. Because when you start as an indie filmmaker, you are very much boxed like this, and you say, "Oh, I will never do mainstream," and this and that. Oh, this is like I'm creating art or whatever. But that is a high spectacled art, which is made for the person who is sitting on the front row of cinema, who has spent money for it, and they want their bucks back, and they also want to be emotionally connected while watching a spectacle. Now that is a tough ask, honestly. That, I mean, you can probably impress a critic, but that guy is hard to impress. I mean, compared to like the general idea that you can make any shitty thing and the people will pay for it. That really doesn't happen, and that's something which was new to me. After 2 years of working, I realized no, you can't just make everyone happy like that. So yeah, I learned that. I also discussed the story with Rajamouli sir, and he gave me some very interesting tips on it, how to improve it, how to increase the spectacle while keeping it intertwined with very human emotions. And that is how stories become global. You don't try to make it global, you make a very human story, which is something which I did with Shirkoa, but it was a human story. It was about everyone, it was not about particular culture. And I think Rajamani served that really well. He creates a very human story which speaks to everyone. So those were quite a few learnings from it. And now again, I'm going in that painterly look, but this time I'm expanding it. So we have a very large team across the world, from France to UK, to India. We have a screenwriter who's amazing, Scott Mosier. He did the Clerks movie long time back, and he did Grinch, the animated movie. And now he's writing both the Bahubali movies right now with me. It's big, and it's very inspiring and exciting to work with these amazing artists every day. I'm very excited for it, honestly.
We are excited for that as well, and we can't wait for the rest of the world to watch it as well. Thank you once again for Schirkoa in Lies We Trust, and we look forward to seeing your journey as you hone more of your voice. And again, thank you so much for joining for this Q&A today. It's been really insightful, and again, I wish you all the best from the team.
Thank you so much, Devang. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
India Meme Festival. Thank you.